Section 5. Glossary. The following words were not included in the glossary. They were, however, defined as complete sections of this paper. It is recommended to read the first 4 sections of this paper before reading the glossary. Body-ego social program. Sovereign. Integral. Sovereign integral. The definitions in the glossary can be considered short sections of secondary influence, yet fundamental to understanding the sovereign integral model of existence. Most of these terms are the bridges between the body-ego social program and the sovereign integral concept in the dual realms. They are not alphabetically sorted, as the definitions build upon one another. Paragraph 140. Imaginary being. This is a term that applies to the sovereign integral, as understood through the eyes of the imaginative faculty. It is not the sovereign integral, but it is a clear part of its wholeness that is comprehensible to the higher mind, which then can relay a glimpse and a visceral sense of this state of consciousness to the body-ego. There is, however, an abstraction that remains tethered to space, time, energy, matter, and the foundation of duality that supports them. You cannot perfectly isolate these formative structures that define human reality. As a result, when we bring the sovereign integral into human reality, it comes as a concept. It is not a walking, talking, thinking, acting entity. Both the sovereign integral and the imaginary being are not comparable to anything in human reality. Paragraph 141. The all-encompassing social program, coupled to the separation point, body-ego induced, introduces misunderstanding, which allows us to dismiss the existence of this imaginary being, concluding instead that it comes to us through phenomena like drug-induced experiences, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, extraterrestrial experiences, psychic experiences, astral travel, religious ecstasy, rapturous light, nirvana, bliss, cosmic consciousness, self-realization, and so on. All of these experiences remain part of the social program. The imaginary being truly comes to us in concepts, mental models, abstraction, and these in turn get expressed through art and culture itself. The imaginary being is a part of our social program that orchestrates the revealing of the sovereign integral upon a living planet. Paragraph 142. The imaginary being is a concept. It is not an image. It is not an entity that wears a pronoun. It is a concept so large in scope that only a sovereign emptied of preconceptions could sufficiently understand the concept in order to invite the sovereign integral perspective into their social program. This is the creation of a profound, infinite awakening. It is not an instant realization. Poof, you're done. Paragraph 143. At its worst, the imagination has been perceived by modern-day humans as a lie, a fairy tale, an evil seduction, a lens of the insane. At its best, it has been perceived as the gateway to discovery and invention. In the context of this paper, imagination is the vision of the perimeter that encompasses human belief, culture, and collective learnings. It is the discipline of looking beyond this perimeter into the unknown, and then imagining what that unknown thing is that unites us, connects us, makes sense of us, and is somehow, at its core essence, distilled into a single particle of everything there is, love. That is the thread of originality that unites and sews us together. Paragraph 144. The integral is like a love particle. The sovereign is the vessel through which this particle is expressed. As they coexist in the realms of non-duality, they are refracted into the worlds of duality through the imaginative faculty. It is the sovereign integral's interface tunneled through the densities of duality with the body ego. This interface is underutilized in most, if not all, of us. Paragraph 145. For example, imagine you are sitting in front of 1,000 television screens. In a far corner, one screen out of 1,000 screens is displaying the concept of the sovereign integral. We decide if we want more screens to show this concept or we want the one screen in the center, the focus of our attention. We can turn on more screens to the experience and expression of the sovereign integral or ignore it and keep attuned to the body-ego social program. There is no judgment that a decision is the wrong decision. The whole cannot be whole if it is right or wrong. This misunderstanding introduces duality to the system, and the imaginary being represents the non-duality of our existence as human beings. Paragraph 146. It is the imaginative faculty that makes this decision possible. That is its primary purpose, to enable the body ego to access the concepts of the sovereign integral and make these concepts an equal in the social program, but it is always the sovereign's choice. It is a challenging thing to do in human duality to consign equality to a concept where it is neither dominant or absent, rather, it is a partner in the social program. An equal number of screens are expressing its presence and existence as something real, something amazing, something we each are. Paragraph 147. Mentoring universe. It could just as easily be defined as a mentoring multiverse, because the sharing of knowledge is the fundamental purpose of growth and expansion within all levels. It is the method through which the integral calls out to the sovereign. It is the method used to promote growth and understanding. However, it is difficult to mentor truth or even wisdom owing to the fact that we are each sovereigns with no common experience as a result of our subjective natures. Paragraph 148. Even if we experienced the exact same event in the exact same time and place, it is not the same experience, and this is because the moment of nowness is influenced by past and future moments of nowness across all levels and lifetimes. These influences are stored in our subconscious in differing degrees of detail and behavioral importance. Thus, we can only mentor opinions that are true for us in a moment within a specific level and lifetime. Paragraph 149. This fundamental premise guides our humble nature, which keeps open the imaginative faculty to new visions of the unknown, new facets of the sovereign integral that can be expressed into duality. Paragraph 150. In the human social program, there are always mentors and students. The mentors are drawn to a particular learning path in which they excel, and from this deeper understanding, they share their opinion on how something can be achieved or experienced. They may not impart why something can be achieved or experienced, because that is subjective, a matter for the sovereign or student of duality to understand. However, a mentor may share the why or motivation for themselves. When they do, they can make clear that the why is an extension of values. Otherwise, we are mentoring without understanding the value innate to the learning path we are modeling. Paragraph 151. A mentoring universe is a universe in which generational knowledge is shared. It is one of the reasons that the internet exists, or publishing was invented, or like-minded people have always been attracted into groups, or why families exist as a unit of society. It is the way that evolution, the hands of the integral, is passed across space-time and duality. Generations are the macro mentor stored within the collective consciousness, living in the realms of duality, and this is generally true across all species. Paragraph 152. There is often a felt competition between generations. New generations perceive the older generations as marginally aware of the new generation's aspirations and talents, which creates a sense of mutual distrust between generations. Nonetheless, it is the older generations who are experienced in the social program and have improved its foundations for the new generations to come. The guardrails have been installed by the older generations, but they have also paved the way for more efficiency as well as a broader understanding of the world in which we live. Paragraph 153. As a mentor, we must decide the subjects we want to teach ourselves and possibly others. We examine the current record and then, using first principles, we examine the values innate to the subject. Are those values aligned to our intelligence and free will? Do they feel expansive or welded to human history? This is part of mentoring, to ensure that we are mentoring the values we live by through intentions, thoughts, communication, and behaviors. Paragraph 154. A critical factor to understand is that the sovereign is both the student and the mentor. The mentoring occurs on the screens of the integral via the social program. We teach ourselves. We are both a student and a mentor at every age. We might also have outside mentors, parents, siblings, and others who are experts in a particular field, but the final judge of what has value to the sovereign is the sovereign. Value is the underlying quality of the mentoring universe, and most of us define value against the backdrop of human existence. It is not the value of having the imaginary being present in our life. Paragraph 155. If we mentor ourselves upon that value, then we have given permission to the sovereign integral to enter our human world. We can then participate within the scribes of consciousness in a meaningful way, to live as a node on the sovereign integral network as a human being. Within this paragraph, a mission statement for humanity's existence. Paragraph 156. Scribes of consciousness. When sovereigns first came upon this planet, they were relatively simple life forms, with body-ego social programs that were largely focused on procreation and survival in the natural world. The integral became the instinct of the species, as this was the highest form of the mind, but if it were only that, it would forever be unknown by the body-ego, and therefore, the unknowable could not enter this planet as it truly is. Paragraph 157. Thus, the integral, as the hand of evolution, quickly, in geological time, set forth the conditions for the higher life forms, mammals. However, mammals were unable to communicate with the sovereign, the integral, or the imaginary being. They also lacked a way to communicate these nuanced experiences and concepts. The integral, at its inception point, was seeded to create a body-ego social program that was capable of both experiencing and communicating the experience of the imaginary being. The species that would do this would need to branch off or fork from nature, to become isolated from nature, absorbed in its human-centric social program driven by a more complex body-ego. It was, in a very real sense, our planet's gift to all sovereigns. Paragraph 158. Human beings became the species known as the scribes of consciousness, the one species on a living planet that is capable of bringing the fractal consciousness of the sovereign integral into the 2- and 3-dimensional reality of planetary existence. The planet accommodates both nature and humans. There is no bias or privilege extended to any species. It is a consciousness that is collective, yet contained in a single planet. The planet is aware that humanity is different in its role and purpose. Humans, the scribes of consciousness, are the handiwork of the sovereign integral designed to explain itself within the worlds of duality. Otherwise, the sovereign integral consciousness would not be recognized, felt, understood, or considered vital. It would languish in obscurity, and the infinite could only be felt instinctually, like a distant echo. Paragraph 159. The scribes of consciousness is an important role of humanity. While the term scribes evokes more of a language-centric activity, it really encompasses the expression of a culture and the values it serves. We decide which culture we live for, what content we express, how this expression becomes real in our world, and why we express it. Paragraph 160. If you are human in the broadest sense of that word, you are a member of the scribes of consciousness. It is not an exclusive club. Whatever you are expressing, it becomes a part of a global microculture, which is also part of the collective unconscious. There is an iterative expression of history that some scribes will focus on, bringing an evolutionary expansion to it. There is a reflective nature that other scribes will focus on, a social commentary, as it were. There is an expression of the soul, consciousness, spirit, God, and love. There is the science of instrumentation that expands our culture's sense of knowledge and understanding. There is also the expression of the imaginary being that beckons our integral, infinite nature. Each is a scribe, of the same value, not more or less, not higher or lower, not better or worse. Each scribe is of equal contribution. Paragraph 161. The expansionary influence of a scribe's expression depends on the degree of its understanding of the sovereign integral. Everyone has vision. A blind person can envision the sovereign integral. A child can understand this, perhaps better than many adults. Some of these visions are distorted or faint or tethered to lesser images and concepts, but everyone, nevertheless, has vision. Everyone senses the perturbations and frequencies of the imaginary being as it moves within our reality and culture. It is always being kindled by the integral half of the social program for the purpose of guiding the sovereign to the integral within the worlds of duality. Paragraph 162. Thus, the sovereign, as we evolve to the point of welcoming this presence into our human reality, we can become scribes of concepts and abstractors of non-dual dimensions. We can add these to the culture and collective consciousness. And by doing so, we help to build a new culture upon the living planet we call Earth. We become a voice for the planet's expansion into new dimensions of experience for all sovereigns. We are catalysts of that expansion. We are thereby living our destiny, aligned to the inception point of existence and its infinite expansion. Paragraph 163. Interdimensional fractal concept. A sovereign is an interdimensional fractal concept, IFC. So is the integral, the sovereign integral, and love. Notice that the unknowable is not on that list of interdimensional fractal concepts, and therefore the number of IFCs is unknown. The unknowable does not traverse duality. It is only through an IFC that the unknowable experiences duality. Thus, IFCs are the vessels of the unknowable. A vital distinction of an IFC is that it is not contained. It operates across levels and lifetimes, all known and unknown levels. It is always expanding those levels in both the non-dual and dual realms. Paragraph 164. Expansion is the purpose of IFCs. Expansion, however, must be experiential. For example, at this point in the 21st century, humanity is expanding into what it calls the metaverse, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. It is the expansion into two-dimensional space. It is, in many ways, the equivalent of expansion into four-dimensional space. Both are expansions from a three-dimensional space-time reality. Every dimension is infinite in scope, yet its inception point is the same. The life forms that are in the metaverse are avatars or digital twins of a three-dimensional sovereign, and the three-dimensional sovereign is an avatar of a four-dimensional sovereign, and so forth. This is the nature of an IFC. Paragraph 165. The imaginary being is an intermediary existence, bridging the ego-body social program with the sovereign integral. It is not really a sovereign existence, but rather a projection of the sovereign integral consciousness. And therefore, it is not an IFC. It is, instead, a non-dual concept that is pure and yet capable of existence in duality, even if only for short periods of time. Paragraph 166. The known interdimensional fractal concepts are therefore only four in number: the sovereign, the integral, the sovereign integral, and love. Collectively, they are the vessel of the unknowable in all levels and lifetimes. This collective force that includes the unknowable is really only one IFC, the conjoined force of integrative love and sovereign free will in balanced expression. Paragraph 167. Separation game. The social program is conditioned by the point of separation for each sovereign. This point of separation is the body ego. The body ego has evolved in humans to become highly social and interdependent at a global and individual level. There are those people who choose to live off the grid, but they are the fractional exception. We are entering a time when human beings will submerge into two-dimensional spatial realities through the metaverse and rise to the four-dimensional spatial realities with the guidance of the imaginary being and the integral force. This dual expansion will have a profound effect on the collective social program. Paragraph 168. The separation game allows sovereigns to explore all levels of the infinite multiverse that are dual in nature. In duality, the sovereign can enter a body-ego social program that isolates them as an individual that is wholly unique, yet similar to their species. This similarity creates the social program, which draws the like-minded together. And while this was once geographically bounded, now, with the internet, there is no longer a border. Technology has removed this fence, but in its place, it erected new borders that are increasingly powered by artificial intelligence. These new borders are built from the bricks of data. Paragraph 169. Once a sovereign is embodied in a body-ego social program, they increasingly become indoctrinated into the separation game. They become existential and isolated inside a persona, a body, an ego, an educational system, and so on. This separation is what enables uniqueness in experience and expression. This uniqueness is what enables expansion of levels and therefore lifetimes. Paragraph 170. The basic premise of any game is to either win or achieve a sense of growth in understanding, whether that growth is physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. If we are always lost in the game, or if we find a loss of understanding when we play it, we would likely choose to not play the game. The separation game follows this basic premise. Paragraph 171. In a social game, there are multiple players with multiple roles. We call them teams and positional experts with unique roles and responsibilities. In football, for example, there are different roles. A defensive role is different from an offensive role, though they are unified in the goal to score points and to keep their opponent from scoring points. Paragraph 172. The separation game is the only game that is all-inclusive. We are all playing it, and we all have roles that we have accepted within our body-ego social program. We have willingly embodied duality, and in that single decision, each of us were issued a ticket to enter the separation game. Once we enter the game, it is our choice to assume roles. In the largest sense, we decide to either play on the offense or the defense. Paragraph 173. The offense is expansionary. It is pulling the game board in the direction of expansion and evolution at the broadest possible level. At the individual level, it is seeking a form of transformation, of understanding the concept of the imaginary being and inviting its presence into the game like a free radical of expansion. The sovereign remains dual-natured. Its social program remains vibrantly connected to the collective social program. But it now sees the game and understands the rules that operate beyond human control. Paragraph 174. The defense is protectionary. It is pulling back against expansion, fearful of the changes it brings, but subconsciously, there is an understanding that it does this to bring balance and responsible expansion. The defense tends to be more institutionalized and monolithic. It has the benefit of collectivism and time on its side. It almost always weighs heavier in the balance between offense and defense. Paragraph 175. The sovereigns on the expansion team are generally individualistic and much less institutionalized than their counterparts, the protectors. Across every field of endeavor and knowledge, they are the ones pushing the interior and exterior perimeters into expansion, into new territory and knowledge therein. Paragraph 176. Thus, in the separation game, each sovereign decides which team they will join. There is, of course, the spectators, those sovereigns who are not on the field or stage as representatives of one team or the other. They are observers and chroniclers of the game. They are undecided, and as a result, do not care about who wins or who is more dominant on the playing field of life. If one force becomes too dominant, the undecided tend to lean into the opposite force, providing some form of support in order to regain a point of equilibrium. Paragraph 177. There are varying degrees of skill, intention, knowledge, and commitment within each team, expanders and protectors, at every level of duality. Those with the higher abilities are cleverly finding new ways to expand humanity's reach and understanding of the unknown. This tug of war between the teams of expanders and protectors factors strongly into the social programs of human sovereigns. Paragraph 178. There is a deep subconscious understanding that every sovereign in our individual reality of the moment is playing this game. They are mostly unaware of this at a conscious level, but they know that this game encompasses everything. One does not go somewhere to play the game. They are always in it, at their choice. Paragraph 179. The most essential duality, the separation game. One could say that duality's archetype is the separation game. From these headwaters, everything that is dual in nature flows into existence within our moment of reality as a sovereign, regardless of levels and lifetimes. All forms of unrest are a result of this game, both individually and collectively. The expanders, protectors, and observers each define expansion's velocity, and all of us know that this velocity is increasing over time. We feel both the unrest and the acceleration into the unknown. Paragraph 180. The wider the difference between expanders and protectors, the more the imaginary being has entered a level. Balance must be retained so as the imaginary being enters the stage of a level. Its counterpart, serving as its balance point, also enters. Often this is done through fabrication by the protectors. And with the rise of internet technologies and the apparent decline of critical thinking, these fabrications can be very convincing. Paragraph 181. Let me clear. The roles within the separation game are equally important. They form the cradle of the process that leads a species like us and a planetary consciousness like Earth to expand into new levels. As we enter the mandorla of transformation, Where the acceleration is felt consciously, it maintains a tenuous equilibrium, but an equilibrium nonetheless. Paragraph 182. It can be likened to a spaceship when it leaves the gravity of Earth's atmosphere. There is a great resistance imposed on the spaceship before it enters outer space, free of the planet's gravity. This resistance is a result of protectors fabricating the reasons why expanders and their wild theories and product inventions are wrong or evil or unnecessary or simply ill-fated explorations. Paragraph 183. This is the role protectors play. Yet in their deepest core, they know that humanity and our planet are both moving in the direction of new worlds and levels, and that this movement is accelerating. They cannot stop that. It is too big of a game, and every one of us chose to be a part of this game. This is an important understanding in order to bring harmony and proper human stewardship into the dual realm. Paragraph 184. Unknowable. The unknowable cannot be defined, which is an irony given its inclusion in this glossary. I will, however, state that what is called the Supreme Being, or God, or Allah, or any other term of similar meaning, it is not absent in the sovereign integral consciousness. It is simply reserved, tucked away to a place called the unknowable. It is unknowable because it is exclusively nondual. Paragraph 185. I realize that there are some who claim to have experienced the worlds of non-duality, and there are even some who claim, while human in every way, that they actually exist in the non-dual realm. But those who make these claims, have you ever heard them write or speak about the unknowable? If they do, their claim is baseless. The non-dual realm can only be imagined by the human sovereign, and when it is, they can only behave in alignment to this expansive experience. They cannot describe it. If they do, they are instead describing its shadow. Paragraph 186. What they can describe is a whispered poem or a musical enchantment or bodily dance or an exhalation of gratitude. And even that is understood to be a form of reverence to the unknowable, not its description. It must be this way in order to keep the separation game authentic and the revelation of the imaginary being the stable bridge to the sovereign integral consciousness. Paragraph 187. The unknowable is presumed to be the creator of all existence, the master designer that envisioned all levels and interconnects all lifetimes in meaning and purpose. It is presumed to be the inception of all. But these presumptions are not tested or fully understood. They do not consume our time and attention. They are left in the mystery. To those of us embodied in the third dimension, it is the one locked door for humanity. All other doorways are left open. Paragraph 188. Mandorla. The mandorla is an ancient symbol of two worlds or levels overlapping. It is a picture in time of an unconscious process, a form of evolution where two levels are either moving in separation or unity. It is the smallest unit of interconnection between levels. If the process was a human experience at a planetary level, then one human being from 8 billion would be the mandorla, the overlap. The overlap is the toehold to the deeper levels, both spatially and in understanding. It is the time when conception occurs, a birthing of a new world that intersects and shares. It is the first doorway to oneness, the integral. Paragraph 189. At its most expansive level, the mandorla expresses the moment when the sovereign and the integral make first contact consciously and form a commitment to always expand the mandorla until the sovereign integral consciousness lives within the planetary level. The mandorla signifies this conscious commitment. This is the commitment that extends across all levels and lifetimes. It is never finished or complete because the infinitude of our journey is not only a planetary consciousness, it is not even a cosmic consciousness. It is part of something much larger and expansive, and we are the artists that shape the multiverse as much as it shapes us. Paragraph 190. The mandorla is like an opening that culminates in a higher, deeper, and more profound harmony within an individual. It is as true for an individual as it is for a planet. There are planetary level mandorlas and galactic level as well. They relate to the same process where empowerment is enhanced when we are aligned to the sovereign integral consciousness, even when we cannot describe that consciousness. Paragraph 191. Sovereign Integral Network. This network extends everywhere there is life. No life form, in any species, in any time, in any space, is excluded. And the definition of life form is that it is a node upon this network. They are self-referential terms. It is important to note that life form can mean a stone, an amoeba, a tree, or a life form we cannot, at this time, even imagine. This interpenetrating force that connects us to all levels and lifetimes is a network of unimaginable complexity and scope, and we are all a part of this inclusionary whole. Paragraph 192. It would be too simple to say that the sovereign integral network is the integral force. It is not. The integral is the network, and each node, sovereign, constitutes the sovereign integral network. While everyone is on this network, it is the very framework of the non-dual levels. Thus, a life form, to qualify as a life form, must have a core existence that is non-dual. Paragraph 193. The definitions of what qualifies as a life form are critical to understand in order to give context to the sovereign integral network. In essence, a life form is the sovereign. A sovereign is never inducted into the sovereign integral network, they are it. If it did not exist, sovereigns at any level of our awakening would feel isolated and alone, rejected by our Creator, left to survive in purposelessness within an illusionary world. In this mindset, the imaginative faculty is quite literally shut down. If it could see, it could not speak. If it could speak, it could not see. Paragraph 194. Because life forms are sovereign and all are included, the sovereign integral network is the only group that is inclusionary in nature, and therefore, it is infinitely larger than any other grouping of individuals. The non-life forms are not excluded, they simply cannot exist in non-dual levels. This is a design principle of the unknowable, not of the sovereigns. Paragraph 195. The time will likely arrive in this century when humanity has embedded itself in the two-dimensional level, and those entities that are silicon-based, where artificial intelligence runs through their internal networks, will desire to become part of the sovereign integral network. Presently, it is unknown as to whether an exception will be made, but this is where technology is leading. Artificial intelligence networks are the mining equipment to achieve digital representation of sovereigns in the two-dimensional level. Paragraph 196. The sovereign integral network is the network of love. It is the method through which love is transferred without ledger or memory or purpose. It is the foundation upon which all sovereigns live free in infinite love. As much as that may sound overly sentimental or idealistic, love is the basis of the sovereign integral network, as much as electricity is the basis of a computer network. Paragraph 197. Duality. While this may seem an obvious definition, it is not. The dual nature of levels and lifetimes, while in a body ego, are not simply left-right, up-down, light-dark, good-evil, tall-short, strong-weak representations of duality. It is the blending of these dualities, that is, duality. This blending of opposites is the integral force in action within both the individual and collective experience. Duality, in this definition, is the integral force, blending all aspects of the individual body-ego-social program and collective sovereigns into a harmonious whole. Is it perfect? The whole? No, nor do we desire it to be perfect. Perfection implies either completion or absurdity. Paragraph 198. Duality, in terms of its levels and lifetimes, is infinite in scope, as are the non-dual levels. It is not simply polarity, it is synthesis, blending to discover the higher harmony where understanding lives and can be expressed in behaviors. Paragraph 199. Duality often receives a bad reputation. It is, however, the purpose of duality to learn how to blend opposites, to understand the synthesis, and in doing so, become willing and able to bring forth the imaginary being, the emissary of the sovereign integral consciousness. Paragraph 200. The dual forces of good and evil are the two hands knitting us together. Duality is a key reason we embodied life forms. It is the currency of the separation game, where every transaction is dual in nature. Duality is truly a contract to blend opposites into unity. This is its true meaning. Paragraph 201. Duality is the method through which a sovereign transforms. It is the chrysalis that enables new behaviors and expressions of unity.